Welcome to more Gran Turismo 6 Quick Match Specialtatin. Today, we have something completely different. The first of hopefully many quick matches at the 400 performance point production. Car event at Tsukuba, or however you pronounce it. I'm just gonna say Tsukuba. How do y'all think that's pronounced? Tsukuba. That's what I'm saying. But anyway, what's not so different is the Ram still has pretty cotton-picky good acceleration for this. If y'all actually know how to pronounce the name of this track, if I'm not saying it right, I guess, I don't really know how you leave pronunciation in the comments, but as far as I know, it's Tsukuba. I'm not 100% sure if I ever actually heard that track said, because I've never actually seen it raced in real life, because I don't live in Japan, but whatever. And something that's different about the 400 performance point event is, like the 500 performance point event, my Ram is really good accelerating because it's a four-wheel drive vehicle with a lot of power, but I'm not necessarily any better accelerating in comparison to the other cars from the 500 performance point event, but where the cars are slower in general, it's working with more seconds. Like, I may be 20% faster than the others accelerating with both 400 and 500 performance points, but I'm 20% faster in 400 performance point when the average acceleration time to 60 is like 8 seconds. But then at 500 performance points, it's like 4 seconds. So I ain't necessarily any faster, just there's more seconds to work with, so it sort of kind of looks like it. And after that rambling's done, now that there's like the parameters and such, for races that are sort of like this, where if I get pretty much a front row start, I'm gonna be way gone from the rest of the field for a while. After this race onwards, if that happens when I do Specialtatin, I'll just skip forward with the menus to the point of where it gets to good racing. I don't really want to just sell boring racing until it actually gets to the interesting part, when I can just skip to the interesting part. That's going to be a drawback of this event, is just there's going to be so many different types of strategies for this where it's actually a short track. You can get some cars that ain't necessarily all that fast accelerating, but to handle really good, that can still be fast. But then you have a strategy like me, where you get really good accelerating vehicles that don't necessarily handle as good as some of the others. So, yeah, there's going to be a whole heck of a heap of strategies for this race. But this one is actually about a minute or so longer-ish than the previous 500 performance point race. The highest split time I've got in the 500 performance point race was a 4:43, I think, and the fastest I've done in a few races this time around is a 5:34. So yeah, there might be some bit at the beginning that's kind of boring, but whatever. This is actually the only good race I've had so far, and I'm recording this Thursday afternoon after already doing probably 10 or so races. But that doesn't necessarily mean the other races were bad, they just weren't quite as entertaining. But this one's pretty cotton-picking and entertaining, because that Toyota MR2 or MRS or whatever it is, the little mid-engine Toyota, MRS apparently. I don't know what the S stands for. I think of them more as MR2s, but apparently this ain't that. But anyway, that handles better than the Ram, but it doesn't quite accelerate as good as the Ram. So, the one negative, though, to the Ram is that while it does accelerate better than the rest and handles better than about all the rest, definitely pound for pound better, just like the 500 performance point event, while it beats all the other cars that I've seen so far up to about this speed, about 80 or so, as y'all can see as I pause it, it doesn't have much top end. Because 500 performance point, it was tuned up. 400 performance point, it's tuned down. And so that seems to just sort of be a trend in this game of tuning cars to be slower. Is they don't have as much top end speed, and that's definitely a truism here. While the Ram is about the fastest you have a top speed for the 500 performance point event, it ain't quite as good with 400. So, yeah, the Ram ain't perfect here, and also just where it's a lower performance point in general, it can't drift here. But nonetheless, where it is a tighter track, it's still some pretty pretty good racing here. And the acceleration, as I said before, it ain't necessarily better, but there's more time to work with, so even though it ain't statistically better in terms of percentage, it creates for more dominant advantage for the Ram, just because there is more time to work with, so therefore the gaps become bigger. But all in all, though, unless the Ram is incredibly fast through this last turn, I think the MRS is going to get it. It handles just that much better and has that much little bit of top end there, so there you have it, folks. That's that, and the MRS gets the first win here. And actually, this was my very first race. I don't really have any way to prove it, but just trust me, it was. I guess you could see it a little bit at the beginning of there where I wasn't quite hitting the marks as good as I might. And also, where I say that as well, for people who just having their first races here, the next video I post will be a tutorial video on how to run this track. I didn't post that first because I need to learn how to run it too. But once I get a good lap done, I will indeedy do a tutorial for this track as well. So I hope you all enjoyed the first Specialtatin of hopefully many, because this does look like it's going to be some pretty picky good race finishes. Race start, gonna depend on where the Ram starts. Race finish, looks like it's going to be pretty picky and entertaining, folks. Looks like that indeed. Yeehaw!